Okay, this is a video called Investing Advice for My Beautiful Sister. This is a video I wanted to make in order to explain some of the basics of investing to help out my sister. So, I wanted to start this off by saying, why do we invest? Why do we invest? This is an important question. You're always hearing people saying, oh, I made 30 grand off this stock, right? My crypto earnings just doubled, or something weird like that. And so it's kind of confusing, and you say, okay, why should I invest at all? Why should I do this at all? Why is anyone doing this? And the answer is compound growth. So this concept of compound growth becomes very important for growing our money and taking the money we have now, saving it and investing it over a long period of time. You can turn it into a lot more money. You let your money work for you and grow and build your wealth. So, compound growth. So I made a little calculator example to kind of explain this. So here we go. I made this Google sheet called compound growth. And here you are as a bum. This is you as a bum. You don't want to be this bum. But if you save and invest your money, you turn into this clean-cut boy. You want to be the boy, not the bum. The boy is what you want here. So if you take anything away from this video, know that through saving and investing, you can turn from this hobo, this homeless bum, into this well-looking boy. So there you go. So what do we got going on here? I have a little calculator that I just made real quick in Google Sheets, and what it's calculating is a thing called future value. So if you go into Google Sheets or Excel and type FV, this formula will pop up called future value. And so this is a way to calculate how much money you'll have in the future if you do certain things, and it'll tell you, the value of your investments given some inputs. For my example, these inputs are right up here. I've got interest rate, time period in years, how much money we're going to contribute per month, an initial investment, so we might have 10 grand right now that we can invest. And this compounding period just means that I'm going to assume that I'm going to put money away every month, and I'm going to get 5% return every month on what I'm putting down. So right here, grand total. This is using future value, taking in my interest rate for 30 years at $500 a month with an initial investment of 10 grand, compounding every month. And look at this. If we invested $500 a month at a 5% interest rate for 30 years, we'd have $460,000. And so that might not mean all that much, but if you look at how much you've actually contributed over those 30 years, $500 a month, times 30 years plus your 10 grand, so that's what I have here is B3 is going to be my $500 times 12, so essentially how much per year for 30 years plus my 10 grand. This is how much money you've actually put down. So this is how much money from your income that you've actually invested. And that's $190,000. But look, all of a sudden, because of compound growth, you now actually own $460,000. So which would you rather have? I'm going to take the $460,000, right? So this is why you invest. This is why if you have money just sitting in your bank account, you want to use it and let it grow. This is why people talk about investing. And money in your bank account does grow. You do have an interest rate on your money in your bank account, but it's usually very small. Currently, it's super low. And so there's better ways to use your money and let it grow than just letting it essentially be cash in your bank account that you could spend at any given moment. So let's play around with some of these parameters. So let's say I'm 27 years old right now and I want to retire at, I don't know, around 65. So if I want to retire at 65, excuse me, and I'm 27. That means I have 38 years but until I'm 65. So let's say I invest for 38 years for retirement at 65. And let's say I put $500 a month away and started with 10 grand and I get 5% on that. Look at that. Now I have $750,000 and I've actually only contributed $238,000. So this difference is starting to grow. And it's all because of this 5% compounding growth, this exponential compounding growth. And now, instead of, let's say, saying we get 5% on our investment, let's say we get 11.8%. Let me just turn that into a percent real quick. Look at that. All of a sudden, I have $5 million. $5 million. And you might say, this calculator is broken. That can't possibly be the case. But I assure you, it actually is working correctly. This is the power of compounding growth, is this exponential growth. And so this is why it's very important to invest over long periods of time. If you can slowly contribute to a retirement account over the course of your working life, you can retire and not be a bum. You turn into a boy. You can actually have a retirement fund. And look at that, $5 million at that. That's a pretty sweet thing. You could live for many years off of that. And that's the goal. And so you might say, okay, well what are all these assumptions? Like, what do we got going on here? What is this 11.8%? You know, what's happening here? So I think I just showed that 38 years is a pretty realistic time to put money away, assuming you retire at 65. And sure, we might not live till 65, but we can assume we might live till 95. We might live till 105. So 65 might not be that crazy of a estimate, right? $500 a month. That's a pretty good estimate of how much money you could save. You could likely save a lot more, especially if you have a high salary. And of course, $500 a month is a lot of money that you're just going to have to put away for a long time, but hey, it might be worth it if you're going to get 5 million in the end, right? And 10 grand initial investment, you know, you might have 10 grand right now that you could invest and you're willing to put that away. So these assumptions aren't all that bad. The 11.8%, you might ask, where am I getting that number? Well, that's actually, I'm getting that from something called this index. So right here, I Googled S&P 500 index average return since inception. So what the S&P 500 index is it's basically the 500 biggest companies in the US. So the 500 biggest companies would be like, you know, Apple, Google, Facebook, Amazon, Ford, you know, some of these companies. These are the 500 biggest companies in the US. And if you look for a long time, over a long period of time, so I believe this data is being pulled from 1926, so a really long time, from 1926 until 2022, so almost 100 years. The 500 biggest companies in the US, average rate of return, their stocks that is, has been 11.82%. So look at that. That's, you know, that might be a realistic estimate on what you can expect in this calculator. 11.8% return. You might be able to get that for 38 years. You might be able to put $500 a month away, and you might be able to start it with 10 grand. And look at that, you now have $5 million. And look at this, how much you've actually contributed is only $238,000. Incredibly different with these higher interest rates. And so this is why people talk about investing, is because it's an important way to utilize compound growth over long periods of time to retire. And these numbers can get kind of crazy, right? Let's assume that we have a ton of money. So maybe I'm a trust fund baby, and my parents just give me 500 grand at the age of 25 and say, here you go. And I just throw it right into the market, all 500 grand of it. Boom. Look at this. All of a sudden we have $47 million. And so this is how people are able to achieve crazy amounts of wealth, is because compound growth over the course of their life. With 47 million, you can sure go ahead and start a few companies and buy a few houses and create some businesses and make more money and turn it into other things. And this is the crazy effect of compound growth. And so you can play around with this and look at, how changing things affects everything. Currently at 11.8%, I would call this a very high interest rate, saying our growth is 11.8%. That's typically a lot higher than what any given person would expect to see, probably. But it's not unrealistic. It's quite possible you could achieve that. It's also quite possible that you could achieve an interest rate way lower. You might get 1% interest rate, in which case, all of a sudden you've only made 50 grand or whatever earnings off this 1% growth over your 38 years. So this interest rate can have a big effect on your value. So let's just give a hypothetical, one last example. Let's say you get 11.8%, or actually that's probably a bit high. Let's say you get 7% return, and let's say you start investing when you're 20, and maybe you invested for 45 years. And let's say you're real frugal and maybe able to put $750 a month into a retirement account. And let's just say you had 10 grand to begin with. Look at this. This might be the case for someone. It's very possible to achieve all these things. And look at that, you have $3 million in retirement. So this is how you retire. The government wants you to be able to retire. So they want you to, not work until you're 85 and we have a bunch of old people with dementia working. We don't want that. So this is why compounding growth is important to take advantage of. So this is my way of answering the question, why do we invest? Because compound growth, the future value of our money, can grow exponentially. And one other thing I wanted to answer with this video is, you might say, wait a second, but sure, I have all this money, but where are the taxes? Isn't the government gonna want some of this $3 million of mine? And the answer is yes, of course, they always want your money. But it turns out, let's put this back to $500. It turns out that there are actually ways that you can put this money to work tax-free. And these are what retirement accounts do. So I have this taxes right here. It can't possibly be that easy. But it turns out you can actually use what's called an IRA, specifically probably a Roth IRA, which is a thing that any person working in the US with probably a social security number or something can do. I have one myself. You should too. And you can contribute $500 a month to it, and you might get 7%, and you might be able to do it for 45 years, and therefore you might have $2 million in retirement. And so this is actually achievable. You could do this without taxes. You could have $2 million for retirement. And there's a lot of assumptions built into this that you can go into a lot more detail to talk about. So for example, what your interest rate obviously has a huge effect on how much your future value is. And so this is a huge assumption, whatever you use. Your time period in years, you might be able to guess that fairly accurately. You might say, I'll probably retire around that age of 65. So just, take however old you are now and, assume you'll retire around 65. So this time period in years, you can, have a good guess at how much you can contribute per month. That will change obviously depending on your income to, expense ratio and how much money per month you spend to pay rent and pay, buy groceries and pay for your car and pay for insurance and you know, go out and get drinks with your friends. And so how much you contribute per month is very personal, but you know, you might be able to contribute more than you think. Um, and this initial investment is not terribly important, but you might have 10 grand right now that you're able to put away for retirement. And so all of these things are, you can look into this and try to determine, you know, what makes sense for you financially. And it's important because otherwise, you know, you're sitting here with 280,000 versus I'm sitting over here with 2 million. And that's why it's incredibly important to invest your money. This is why people talk about it. So I want to cover some more topics in another video because this video seems to be getting long. It looks like it's 16 minutes around right now. So yeah, maybe I'll make another on how we actually do it. How do we invest? Because that's a good question. How do we actually invest? So that's coming next. And I want to just end with this for you. A nice photo for make you feel better about missing out on your few years of investing.